Okay, this video is from the book Underground Guide to Study Schools, written by me, Pete Rogers. We're going to talk about a study skill technique called pre-reading. And where this came from was, I had done really well at Stanford, student athlete of the year, A+ student in tough classes, but I was in med school now, and the biochemistry class was kind of overwhelming. The teacher would cover a whole bunch of stuff real fast. I had a difficult time keeping up with it. And, I wanted to try to do well. I thought biochemistry was the most important class. It was the most difficult class in medical school. So what happened to me was, I guess it'll come in the play here. This, by the way, this picture is of my illustrated condensed notes. This came later. These illustrated condensed notes I used when I was taking my neuroradiology boards. I wanted to get all the information in one spot, and with all the pictures, and you can see I have extensive writing in the margins as I label these pictures in great detail. And I made little sticker tape. I had tabbed indices, color-coded tabbed indices. So I had all my information in one spot. That's very valuable when you've only got, it's crunch time. You've only got 2 months left to go before you're studying for a final or a standardized test. So that's illustrated condensed notes, one form of condensed notes. All right, so now we're going to talk about how does pre-reading help you. Okay? And this is a game changer. This will make you a way better student. Every student knows what it's like to get overwhelmed by a lecture. Okay? And I would feel like, I'm sitting there in the front row like a good boy, and 10 minutes in, the professor's just overwhelming me, and I'm, lost like Hansel and Gretel with no breadcrumbs. I got to figure it all out for myself on the weekend, and I'm kind of miserable about it. Nowadays, you got a lot of advantages. With all the internet videos, I would watch the internet videos on the subject from at least 2 different speakers the night before. The way I figured this stuff out was I knew that a guy by the name of Charles Kindred, he was a Harvard-trained cardiologist, had gone to the same med school as me. And I knew that he graduated first in his class. So I asked him, I go, how do I deal with this biochemistry? It's, like drinking water from a fire hose. It's overwhelming. And he goes, look, here's what you got to do. He says, you got to get the old last year's notes. You're allowed to buy the last year's notes. And they tend to not change much from year to year. And he says, read them before you go to class, and you'll be a lot better prepared. And we called them co-op notes at my med school. Okay? Everybody's smarter when they've seen the material for the second time around. The other habit I got into doing was I own 4 different versions of the biochemistry book. It's good to always have more than one version of the textbook, because sometimes the other book will just have a key illustration or something in it that just makes it clear. So I would put out 4 biochemistry books on my table, and I would look at them. And I asked myself the question, what is the irreducible minimum? So when I look at glycolysis, for example, the irreducible minimum is the location of the phosphate on the different intermediates in the cycle. So then what I did was I just made a phone number for the location of the phosphate. And once I could memorize where the location of the phosphate, that made it easy to name the intermediates. And once you know the name of the intermediates, the substrate and the product, then it's very easy to name the enzyme. So that's how I memorized glycolysis. But the irreducible minimum was just that little phone number, so 7 digits, and I could remember all of glycolysis from that, the whole biochemistry cycle, which is like 2 weeks of teaching in a medical school biochemistry class. Okay, so once I got that from Chuck Kinder, this idea of pre-reading, everything just got better for me. Like I said, it was like the clouds parted, the sun shone brightly. Now I was really ready for the class. And I did other things too. And I picked these up along the way, different study skills. I'd always sit right in the front row. I would never miss a class. I'd always be on time for class. And I looked at it as a contest between the teacher and me. I thought of myself as like a goalie. And my job was during a biochemistry lecture to not let anything get past me. I try for 100% retention. You never get 100% retention in a biochem lecture, but I got to the point where I would get 85%, sometimes 90%, which is great for a biochemistry lecture. Okay, and I also had like a big attitude. I'd get emotionally psyched up for the class. I would say things like, okay, the teacher, the big shot PhD, he's the past, I'm the future. And by getting all psyched up for it, sitting right in the front row, I was making it an emotional event, being highly engaged. And when you're highly engaged in something, you're interested in it, you're sending a subconscious message to your brain. This is important. You should remember it. And you'll have much better retention because you've looked at the notes the night before. Now you're familiar with all the vocabulary. You've got abbreviations. Once you've got abbreviations for the big words, then you can easily keep up with the notes. For example, adenosine triphosphate, that's a big word. But once you know it's just ATP, it's easy to write ATP. Okay, and there's lots of stuff like that in biochemistry. Okay. And yeah, I just sort of felt like, I'm like a goalie. He's trying to take a shot on goal, and I'm trying to not let anything get past me. And getting psyched up for it. I just crushed biochemistry. I was like the best student probably in the whole United States for biochemistry amongst medical students. I was excited about it. I'm like, if you want to be a great doctor, and you want to be a great scientist and sometimes do unique things in medicine, biochemistry is the foundation of it all. Okay, and I also thought of it as God's language that He uses to write the book of life. So that made biochemistry very interesting to me. I really liked it. I even considered going into biochemistry. I liked it so much. Okay, yeah, and it was almost like turning the review into the lecture into a review for me. Okay, so it familiarizes you with all the concepts. Of course, I was first in my class in biochemistry by far. There was nobody in my ballpark even. And you can keep up with the lecture verbatim, and then you go afterwards. You want to look at your notes as fast as possible, and you can remember the little details and fill in your notes so you got verbatim, complete notes. The class lecture is usually the highest yield information for tests at your school. You always want to go in person, sit in the front row. It's an emotional event. When you're up in the front row, then there's no distractions. If you're in the back row, there's a lot of distractions. Plus, you hear the teacher better, where you can see whatever they're doing a lot better. When I'm in the car, I'll like talk to myself. Like, let's say it's best to live on campus because you can sleep a little longer. You can just walk across the street to go to lecture. But if you have to live farther and commute, while you're in your car, turn off the radio and just sit there and start talking to yourself as you go. Like, let's say the lecture is going to be on glycolysis. You should say whatever you know of the lecture. Okay, glucose comes into the cell through the glucose type 4 transporter. Then it enters the glycolytic cycle. First of all, it's phosphorylated. The big charge from the phosphate keeps it in the cell. Then it has to be made symmetric, so it's isomerized to fructose. Okay, when you do all that and you talk to yourself, you'll miss a few things at first, but you keep doing it and trying over and over, and eventually you'll be able to repeat the whole cycle to yourself pretty easily. That's what I did for all the biochemistry cycles. Let's see. I like writing my notes by hand. Some people like typing their notes into a keyboard because then it's all on the computer, but it's harder to make the little arrows and circles and stuff on a keyboard. So, and I think it sort of activates your brain better to write by hand than a keyboard, but you work out what works for you. And that's pretty much the deal. Note-taking speed is what you need. Pre-read front row is the way to go. And I think you'll find you start doing that, you become a much better student.